My name is Tanisha Bankston. My story is going to be about my life story of being a sexual assault survivor, domestic violence survivor, incest survivor, and child abuse, bullying, teen mom. When I was 5 years old, that's when I first was raped. Before I even understood and knew what rape was, but I knew something wasn't right. And so there was a friend of the family. He came to my grandmother's house and he had already been there. Some of my family members had left and went across the street, the railroad tracks, to my great-grandmother's house. This man, he stayed there, and I was laying in the bed. And so he was standing there at the corner of the door and at the wall. And so when I finally did go to sleep, it was hard for me to go to sleep at first, but when I did go to sleep, he came over there on top of me and he grabbed me and forced himself inside of me. And so I can remember him like today. He has a scar on his face. I know who he was. I could never forget his face. And as he was on top of me, forcing himself inside of me, he raped me. There was a carousel lamp on the floor. And I remember the carousel lamp falling on the floor, like tilting over, and the oil and everything falling, wasting out. And I thought it was lit, but it couldn't have been lit because the house didn't burn down. And so somehow I managed to get this man off of me, kick him off of me in this private area. And I got up, I was crying, and I ran across the railroad track to my mom, and my mom was there. And so she asked me what was wrong. I told her that this man had touched me, had did something bad to me. And so she called the ambulance, and when the ambulance got there, they checked me out and everything. And I remember before being taken to the hospital in the ambulance, there was like a shift went on in my brain. I was once this happy, playful little kid. I was no longer this happy, playful little kid. I was now muted. I lost my inner voice. So it's like I became someone else. And going to the hospital, I can remember them laying me on the bed, and I can remember seeing blood on the sheet. And as I was seeing blood on the sheet, I can remember like seeing doctors everywhere. I had so much fear that was instilled in me from that moment, from being raped at the age of 5 years old that I was. And so I remember having to learn how to walk again and having to go across these metal bars. I remember having like the little metal bracelets on my leg and things like that, because he had, the man who had raped me had messed my legs up so bad. As I got older, the doctor said that I wouldn't be able to have kids. I just feel like I was failed by, the system. I feel like I was failed by some of my family members. I feel like because this man, he never got locked up. Why did he get locked up? I was told that he said that he didn't do any of those things to me, but there was no other man there but him. So he did that to me, and I just feel like, he just got away with it and still getting away with it. Fast forward, after all that happened, I was taken from my mom and adopted by my aunt. Me and my siblings, we were placed with our family members. I just thought, being adopted and being with another family member, I just thought that I would be protected, but instead I just felt like I was just abused and neglected by newer men and things like that, because the molestation and the rape continued on. And one of my male cousins, he would come into my room late at night and he would in my panties, in my pants, and I was already muted. I didn't have the voice, the courage to speak out anymore, because I did say something. I told, my family members. I told the hospitals what had happened to me, and it's like I wasn't believed. It's like the man who molested me, they believed him over me. I was afraid to ever speak again. I never said anything ever again. So it was like I became a target to men. And now here I am. One of my male cousins, like I said, he would come into my room and he would put his hands inside of my panties and he would like place my foot on his until he would just touch me inappropriately and have me doing inappropriate things to him. But I never did say anything. I didn't tell my aunt because I was afraid that she wouldn't believe me, because when I did say something, nobody believed me at the age of 5 years old. And it just continued on for years. And when I was 9 years old, one of my aunt's boyfriend, he would come to my aunt's house and he would like lure me into the woods. He would take me around the block and he would give me money in exchange for, he would give me corn wrappers, penny wrappers, or whatever he had. He would give me dollars. And of course, in my mind, I didn't want to go with him. I didn't want to have sex with this man, but I didn't know how to say anything. I didn't have a voice anymore. My voice was gone. My inner voice was shadowed and I was muted. And so he would take me to the park and he would lay me down on the ground and he would have for me. He would just do all kind of things to my body. And And then he was telling me to go home and not to take a bath or don't tell anybody. But I didn't tell anybody anyways because I didn't have the courage to tell anybody. I didn't have the voice anymore to tell anybody. When I was 11 years old, another neighborhood, he started coming to my aunt's house, and he was friends with the family and everything. And I would go around the neighborhood, around the corner to buy candy from the candy store man. And the grandson was there. And so one day he had me to come in while I was already in the house. He was like, you can get whatever candy you want. He was like, but I want you to come in the back. I didn't want to go in the back. Once again, I didn't know how to say anything. I didn't have my inner voice. I was muted from all the horrific things that already had been happening to me. And he laid me down on the floor, and I never forget, he pulled out a red and he put his side of me, and then he pulled out the condom and he went inside of me. That's when I said, people say, baby, quit saying that these men has you. That's considered rape and molestation, because you were just a minor and these men were grown and they were old enough to know better. And after he did that to me, he started writing me letters and just telling me how pretty I was and things like that, and telling me that I was his girlfriend. He started telling people that I was his girlfriend, and I knew it wasn't right, but it was like it became a norm, because some people didn't even say anything about it. Like, why are you, hey, you're grown, you're messing with this child. And so he started taking me to a hotel with some of his friends. Like, they would take us to the hotels and drop us off. Nobody ever said anything. People knew about it. Some people knew what was going on. The school called my aunt and told her, I guess, I didn't show up at school. And so the police ended up coming to a hotel. How did they find out? I don't know, but I'm glad they did, because he was just about to go inside of me and have sex with me, but he didn't. So he got a knock on the door, and it was the police. And he let him in. Well, first, before he let him in, he hid me in between the mattress. That's just how small I was. And so at first he was going to hide me under the bed, but he didn't hide me under the bed, because he said that people always look under the bed for anybody. They're looking for somebody. They looked around. They didn't see me. And it was one police officer before he left. He said he raised the mattress up. And when he raised the mattress up, he pulled me out of underneath, away from in between the mattress. Police ended up getting me and taking me to the hospital. They took the man that had been having for me, molesting me. They took him to the police station to question him. As I was at the hospital, they ended up doing a rape kit on me. The only DNA from him that was on me was one of his pubic strings of hair. And they said since he hadn't for me, that they could not charge him. And so they ended up letting him go. They took me to the police station where I was questioned. So I thought maybe, hey, you almost got caught by the police for doing these things to me. Maybe that you'll stop doing these things to me, right? But he never stopped. He continued on. So he did it like for years. And now I'm 13 years old. One of my cousin's husband started messing with me, and he ended up getting me pregnant at the age of 13. He introduced me to, he had me to perform oral on him. I didn't know I was pregnant. I just know that I kept sleeping a lot, and my dad had taken me to the doctor, and they confirmed that I was pregnant. The nurse mentioned to me about an abortion. I didn't know what an abortion was. Never heard of an abortion at 13. When I asked what it was, she told me that basically I'd be killing my baby, and if I kill my baby, like some people are not able to have kids when they get older. And I said I didn't want a baby, but I didn't want to abort my baby either. And so I kept my baby. Here I am now 14 years old, in school, 6th, 7th grade, pregnant, just had a baby. And here I am being bullied by kids. And some kids are saying, well, she likes grown men. She's not going to talk like God. Boys used to try to talk to me in school. I wasn't trying to talk to them. I definitely didn't want to talk to grown men, but, grown men were doing what they were doing to me. I was fearful always. I feel as though my body had got so numb and used to all the pain that it was going through. And I feel like I went into shock, and I just feel like it's like my body was there, but my mind had left. I would go somewhere else. The way the family found out he was the dad, when my daughter turned 1 year old, she started walking like him and she started looking like him. She had red hair. And so his wife suggested that a DNA test be done. And so the DNA test was done. We went to the courthouse. The DNA swabbed me, and they swabbed him, and they swabbed my daughter. And the results came back proving he was the father of my daughter. Those results came back because here I am now 15 years old, and he's like 36, 37 years old. And I just feel as though that they, somebody would have pushed some issues, and maybe he would have been, charged and locked up for what he did to me. But instead, I just feel like, what happens in the house stays in the house. I just felt like it was a family secret that, nobody ever talked about. He's still out and still living life and things like that. But I feel as though, all the guys who did the horrific things to me, they're living their life. And I just feel like I'm just now starting to live my life because of all the things, having all that trauma and everything that you're living with those things, from the side effects, the anxiety, depression, PTSD, nightmares, and flashbacks. I didn't know that all those things were from trauma. I didn't even know what trauma was. Sometimes it's hard because it's like reliving them. And like in my head, seeing it, I can see it just like plain and clear. And to be able to still be able to remember all those things vividly and just like it was yesterday, sometimes it's hard. And to know that nobody ever got charged for any of those things that happened to me. It's like I got charged. I had to live with those things in my head for so long. And when I was 14 years old, I met my son and dad. Me and one of my friends were walking around the block, and him and some of his friends were outside, and he called me and my friend over there. And we went over there. He told me to come into the house, and once I went inside the house, he started talking to me, and I don't know if it's because he was aware of what all the other guys had been doing to me. He felt as though that he could do the same thing to me as well. And so he went inside of me, and that's when, after doing that, he said I was his girlfriend when I was 14 years old and he was 23 years old. He started jumping on me like when I was 16 years old. He started hitting me. He would drag me outside. He would just jump on me. He would throw me and my kids' clothes outside. It was just so bad. He would just be very abusive towards me. There were police officers called several times. He ended up with several domestic violence charges. You would think he would have left me alone then, but he didn't. And it just continued and it got worse. The way I got to escape, this guy, he ended up inboxing me on Facebook because I wouldn't talk to any guys. I was afraid to talk to guys. He had me so afraid to talk to people. He inboxed me on Facebook and we started conversating, and I told him that I was in a domestic violence situation, a very abusive situation, and I was needing help to leave because I didn't know how to leave or what to do because I was afraid of this guy. And so I asked him, did he want to start dating? And he said, yes. I told him how, abusive the guy was that I was talking to or whatever, because I don't feel like we were dating. I don't feel like we were in a relationship. The other guy said yes. And so we started talking and conversating, and I asked him, did he want me to go home and tell the guy that we were together now? And he said it didn't matter to him. And so that's how we started talking, and that's how I ended up getting out of the domestic violence situation. But I had to meet somebody else, and like I said, he was a bodyguard, and we became friends more than anything, and he helped me out of that situation because he said he wasn't afraid of the guy. He wasn't worried about the guy harming him or harming me ever again, and that's how I got out, and I escaped at the age of 23 years old. I was 20 years old when I lost my brother to an accident, and he was 19 years old. We were all separated growing up as kids. He ended up getting attached to the wrong people. They tricked him, they turned him against his family. And so he wouldn't talk to us and we didn't talk to him. And there was this one day, the day of his death, he was walking down the street and I ended up passing him because he was mad at me. I was mad at him because his friends turned him against us. And so we didn't talk to each other. But I was on my way to Walmart and I heard an ambulance and something just told me it was my brother. And so I ended up getting a phone call from somebody, a family member, and saying that I needed to go to the hospital, that my brother had just been in a wreck, but he hadn't been in a wreck. When I got there, he was bleeding out of the mouth and everything. And later, a friend of the family told us that he had chewed the hospital didn't know that he chewed the, and he ended up seizing, and so he died that day at the hospital because he ended up chewing. And after that, I turned to the streets. I started turning to like guys and everything. I met my boyfriend. I was 24 years old when I met my first love. Finally found my first love, and I thought he loved me, but he didn't love me like I loved him. And so I ended up in a toxic situation with him. I guess I was looking for love in all the wrong places. And here I was with him for 2 years. I'm 24, 25 to 26 years old. and trying to make somebody love me that didn't, I never got that love that I had been looking for, that I thought I found in him. And then we ended up breaking up when I was 26 years old because it didn't work out. I just feel as though that I'm lost. I lost myself. I've turned to the streets, like looking for any guy who wanted to talk to me. I talked to them. Any guy who wanted to sleep with me, I slept with them because I thought it was okay, because these are the things that had been going on with me. And I ended up later on, at the age of 29 years old, meeting another guy that I had fallen in love with. And we worked together, and that's like when I started on the journey of myself, and God started speaking to me in dreams, and I reached out to these support groups because I needed help. That was it. And we've had our rough patch. It's been a not easy relationship with him and not an easy relationship with myself. Things that helped me process all the things that I've been through. The support groups were helpful. I received therapy. I reached out to different therapists. I found one that was for me, and so that's what helped too, doing therapy. And then I started Googling, almost like yoga. I started just meditating, and so that's what's helped me as well. That's just when my healing journey started, when I was 30 years old, because I broke silence when I was 32 years old, and I'm 35 now, so 2021. I started experiencing PTSD, the nightmares and flashbacks and the anxiety and depression. I was about 28, 29 years old. I started having these tingling feelings in my hands. I started sweating. My palms on my hands started sweating. I just couldn't be around people. People would make me nervous. I started having anxiety real bad, like my heart would start racing. And so I knew I needed help. I ended up making an appointment to Life Help, and they told me I had anxiety. And when I had the sweatiness in my hand, the palms of my hand started sweating. The depression, like my moods will go high. 1 minute my moods are high, the next minute my moods are low. Next minute I'm all over the place. My thoughts are raging. The PTSD is when I just be looking at something and I just drift out, and I just start zoning out, and I just go, or if I'm driving down the road, I just drift out. My mind will just drift somewhere else, and I start thinking about my past, my childhood, or anything like that. And so the nightmares started coming when I just started having flashbacks from some of the horrific things that happened to me. And so by going to the doctor, from having all these symptoms, that's when I got diagnosed with all of these different things. And that's what I want people to know, that they're not alone, and that, that there is hope, and that you can get through it, and I can get through it. January, it was in 2020, when God spoke to me, and he said to leave my job. He told me to leave my job. I was working at Walmart, and I left my job working at Walmart. I didn't know how I was going to make it or what I was going to do. I was staying with my boyfriend at the time. I just didn't know how I was going to make ends meet. And then here it is. I hear another message, I hear God's voice again. He said that it's time to write your book, because I always knew that I was going to be a writer. I always knew that I was going to share my story, and that somebody was going to hear my story, and somebody was going to believe me. Whether they believe me or not, it was to get the story out there and for other people to hear it and to give hope. And so here it is. God told me to pick up my laptop and type my book and write my book. And here it is, January 2021. I picked up my laptop and I started typing, and things just started coming from my mind, of course, because none of these things could ever leave my memory, my mind. So I typed over 30,000 words in 1 week. And so I started reaching out to different publishing companies, and a publishing company ended up telling me that they had approved and accepted my book. I typed out the book in January, the manuscript in January 2021. And so my book was self-published May of 2021, but back to 2020, here it is. I left my job at Walmart January 2020. And when I heard God's voice telling me to leave, like I said, I started reaching out to support groups. Here I am in support group. They're sending me to other people, and I shared my story in another support group called NASPA. It's for National Abuse Children. It's an association, and it's a support group. And so they asked me to speak and to share my story. So I spoke on July 3rd, 2021. And when I spoke, it's like all of the heaviness that was inside of me and on me, it just all came out of me. And it was like a relief that came out of me. And so that's when I rediscovered my inner voice, July of 2021. I'm 35 years old. I am the author of My Pain is My Power, and I'm speaking on different podcasts, sharing my story and giving others hope. I've even started a support group myself. It's a private support group. It's on Facebook. I'm an advocate now. I'm a mental health advocate. I'm a sexual assault advocate. I'm a domestic violence advocate. I am a part of an organization called RAIN. It's for rape and what is it? Are you familiar with RAIN? I'm a part of RAIN. This is my book. Here's me. This is the little girl who was first abused and molested at the age of 5 years old. And here's the grown woman now who's thriving for this little girl and all other children like her, and even grown women who are being abused, and looking to just come out on the other side and hope. And here, my title is My Pain is My Power.